What if the greatest suspense ever filmed was lurking in the shadows of cinema's golden age? These are the thrillers that set pulses racing long before CGI, built on shadows, secrets, and sharp dialogue. From twisting alleyways to tense close-ups, the masters of suspense left us biting our nails, guessing at every turn. We're diving deep into the 25 greatest golden age suspense thrillers, films that shaped every chase, every reveal, every plot twist that came after. Ready to test your nerves and your movie knowledge? Let's unravel the classics that made us afraid of the dark. The Third Man. Fog drifts through the bombed-out streets of post-war Vienna. Zither music twangs in the background, and out of the shadows steps one of cinema's greatest anti-heroes, Harry Lime. The Third Man isn't just a thriller, it's an entire mood. Imagine a city torn apart by war, divided by alliances, where every alley seems to hold a secret and nobody tells the truth, not even your best friend. Roger Ebert called The Third Man one of the great films of all time, and it's easy to see why. Joseph Cotten stars as Holly Martins, a pulp writer lured to Vienna by the promise of a job from his old friend Harry, only to find Harry supposedly dead and the city crawling with suspicion. But then, in one of the all-time great cinematic reveals, Orson Welles emerges from the darkness, grinning like the devil himself. The visuals? Absolute masterclass. Carol Reed and cinematographer Robert Krasker tilt the camera so often you'll feel off balance just watching it. The cobblestone streets glisten with rain. Shadows stretch into infinity. And then there's the chase through the sewers, which feels like descending straight into hell. Graham Greene's script is loaded with bitter wit and existential dread, perfectly matched by Anton Karas's iconic score. What makes The Third Man a suspense thriller for the ages is its sense of moral ambiguity. There are no pure heroes, only people doing what they must to survive. Ebert praised its refusal to spell everything out. Instead, you're left piecing together the puzzle, just like Holly. By the time the unforgettable final shot rolls, Anna walking past Holly without a word, you realize you've just seen a story about betrayal, love, and the darkness in human nature. Watch it in the dead of night for maximum effect. North by Northwest. Cary Grant in a gray suit, running for his life across the windswept plains. A crop duster swooping down like some vengeful god. North by Northwest is the ultimate roller coaster. Spies, mistaken identity, sexy double agents, and a chase across Mount Rushmore that's burned into the collective movie-going psyche. Hitchcock, the master of suspense, is firing on all cylinders here. Roger Ebert loved the film for its playfulness as much as its suspense. The plot kicks off when Grant's Roger Thornhill, just an ad man, is mistaken for a government agent and hunted by shadowy villains led by James Mason's suave nemesis. Along the way, he meets Eva Marie Saint's mysterious blonde, trades wits and barbs, and dodges certain death at every turn. Every scene is engineered to crank up the tension. From the United Nations assassination to that surreal crop duster attack, you're never quite sure what's real and what's a setup. By the time Cary Grant is scrambling over the faces of American presidents, the stakes feel enormous and absurd all at once. Ebert wrote that North by Northwest is like the Hitchcock film with everything: the innocent man on the run, the icy blonde, the elegant villain, the set pieces that make your palms sweat. And yet, for all its suspense, the movie is fun, flirting with parody, but never losing its nerve. It's pure Hollywood magic, expertly crafted, and still as fresh as the day it premiered. Double Indemnity. Talk about the blueprint for noir. Double Indemnity is dark, sharp, and oozing with fatal attraction. Fred McMurray is Walter Neff, an insurance salesman with a knack for sniffing out risk. But he never saw Barbara Stanwyck's Phyllis Dietrichson coming. The story is simple. Boy meets girl, girl wants husband dead, boy says yes, and then everything falls apart. Billy Wilder, directing from a script co-written with Raymond Chandler, crafts a web of deceit so tight it chokes. Roger Ebert adored Double Indemnity, calling it film noir to the bone. Stanwyck is pure danger with an ankle bracelet, and McMurray, usually the good guy, plays the chump to perfection. The dialogue crackles, every line a double entendre, every glance loaded with meaning. The suspense here is psychological. You know from the start that Neff is doomed. He's narrating the whole story into a dictaphone, bleeding from a gunshot wound, sweat soaking through his suit. Yet Wilder keeps you on edge, rooting for a pair of murderers even as you watch them unravel. Edward G. Robinson, as the dogged claims investigator, is the moral anchor, but even he isn't immune to the shadows. Ebert wrote that what makes Double Indemnity endure isn't just the plot, but the mood. The blinds casting stripes of light and darkness. The cool jazz score. The way temptation lures us to our own destruction. It's a suspense thriller that feels inevitable and dangerous. Every step toward the edge laced with dread. After watching, you'll never look at an insurance policy or a femme fatale the same way again. Les Diaboliques. Before Psycho, before The Sixth Sense, there was Les Diaboliques, the French thriller that practically invented the twist ending. Henri-Georges Clouzot's masterpiece is a slow burn, but when the fuse finally reaches the powder, it blows the roof off. Roger Ebert praised it for its remorseless suspense and psychological cruelty. The premise: a cruel headmaster lords over a boarding school, abusing both his wife and his mistress. The two women form a pact to murder him and dump the body in the school's fetid swimming pool. But when the body disappears, guilt and paranoia bubble up, turning their lives into a waking nightmare. Clouzot directs with icy precision, drawing out tension until your nerves are shot. Every creak in the hallway, every shadow flickering in the corner, is loaded with menace. The oppressive atmosphere is as much a character as the scheming protagonists. The famous bathtub scene? Hitchcock himself was jealous. Ebert called Les Diaboliques a film that plays the audience like a piano. And it's true. The audience is complicit, desperate for resolution, yet terrified of what might crawl out of the darkness. The ending, when it comes, is both shocking and perfectly earned. A gut punch that still works even after decades of imitators. Don't let anyone spoil this one for you. The Maltese Falcon, Bogart, Fedora, a priceless statuette. The Maltese Falcon didn't just help invent the modern detective movie, it perfected it. John Huston, in his directorial debut, takes Dashiell Hammett's labyrinthine plot and turns it into a breathless game of wits and double crosses. Roger Ebert wrote that The Maltese Falcon is a movie that knows what it is about. Every character is out for themselves. Humphrey Bogart's Sam Spade, hard-boiled but never heartless. Mary Astor's femme fatale, so slippery she leaves oil slicks. Peter Lorre and Sidney Greenstreet as crooks you love to hate. Suspense here comes not from car chases or shootouts, but from the endless bluffing, the tangled loyalties, the looming sense that everyone is lying and only the sharpest player survives. Huston's camera stays close, watching faces for the slightest flicker of betrayal. Every line of dialogue is a clue. Every gesture might be the key. Ebert loved how the film lets us root for Sam Spade. Even though he's not above bending the rules, the story moves like a chess match, full of feints and reversals. And that ending, with Bogart's stone-cold delivery, the stuff that dreams are made of, leaves you wondering who, if anyone, really won. Riffraff. Imagine the perfect crime. No loose ends, no mistakes, just a team of cool professionals pulling off the greatest heist Paris has ever seen. Riffraff is the grandfather of all heist movies, and Roger Ebert couldn't stop raving about its suspenseful construction. Director Jules Dassin, blacklisted from Hollywood and working with a French cast, delivers a noir so tight it squeaks. Here's the setup. A gang of crooks, led by the world-weary Tony, plot to rob a jewelry store with military precision. The centerpiece is the legendary 32-minute, wordless robbery sequence. No music, no dialogue, just tension so thick you could slice it with a glass cutter. Every movement, every bead of sweat, every creak in the floorboards is amplified to a heart-pounding effect. Ebert admired how Riffraff wrings maximum suspense not from gunfights, but from anticipation and silence. These aren't super criminals. They're desperate men with shaky nerves, bound together by loyalty and bad luck. The aftermath, as the plan unravels and betrayal creeps in, is as bleak as a Paris winter. What gives Riffraff its edge is Dassin's unsentimental style. Every character feels real, battered by life, doomed by fate. Ebert singled out the film's influence on everything from Ocean's 11 to Heat. Without riffraff, the modern heist film wouldn't exist. Watch it, and you'll find yourself holding your breath for half an hour, and then exhaling, amazed by how much tension a single scene can contain. Cape Fear. What happens when evil comes home and refuses to leave? In Cape Fear, suspense is a cancer, slow-growing, relentless, inescapable. Gregory Peck stars as Sam Bowden, a decent man who made the mistake of testifying against a monster. Now that monster, Max Cady, played by a terrifying Robert Mitchum, is free and hell-bent on revenge. Roger Ebert admired the original Cape Fear for its primal, almost mythic sense of threat. Mitchum's Cady isn't just a bad man, he's pure malevolence, taunting Bowden's family, stalking them through sultry southern nights, making every phone ring and shadow at the window a source of dread. The tension is almost unbearable. What's remarkable is how the film, under the Hays Code, delivers so much terror without showing explicit violence. It's all in the anticipation, the dread, the sense that civilized boundaries are useless against true evil. Peck's lawyer is smart but powerless, the law offering little comfort. Ebert wrote that Cape Fear works because of its simplicity. It's a showdown, old-fashioned as a campfire story. Family versus predator, law versus chaos. The final confrontation on the river is as nerve-wracking as anything Hitchcock ever filmed, and it lingers long after the credits. In an age before slasher villains became cliché, Cape Fear made you fear what's lurking outside your door, and it still does. Shadow of a Doubt. Hitchcock famously called Shadow of a Doubt his favorite of all his films. It's easy to see why. Evil hides in plain sight, disguised as family. Set in small-town America, this is a suspense thriller that grows from the inside out, quietly poisoning the ordinary. Charlie, bright and restless, idolizes her uncle. But when he comes to stay, something's off. He's running from something, and the clues start piling up. Is Uncle Charlie the merry widow murderer the police are chasing? The suspense simmers, every dinner table conversation edged with danger. Roger Ebert celebrated Shadow of a Doubt as Hitchcock's most chilling exploration of innocence corrupted. Cotton's performance is a masterclass in charm turned sinister. 1 minute avuncular, the next radiating menace. Hitchcock's America is all sunshine and white picket fences, but beneath the surface, rot festers. Ebert loved how the suspense is both psychological and moral. Charlie's dilemma, how do you confront evil when it wears the face of someone you love, is as gripping as any ticking time bomb. The climactic train sequence delivers a payoff that's both cathartic and tragic. Shadow of a Doubt isn't just a thriller, it's a meditation on the darkness that lies just beneath the surface of everyday life. Out of the Past. Noir doesn't get much more fatalistic than this. Out of the Past is a spiral into doom, a story where every move the hero makes just digs him in deeper. Roger Ebert called it the greatest cigarette-smoking movie of all time, but it's also a masterclass in suspense, where trust is a trap and destiny is a straight shot to the grave. Robert Mitchum is Jeff Bailey, trying to escape his past in a sleepy mountain town. But the past, personified by the oily gangster with Sterling and the beguiling Kathy Moffat, comes calling. The story unfolds in flashback, each revelation tightening the noose around Jeff's neck. Ebert loved how Out of the Past weaves suspense through atmosphere. The cinematography is drenched in shadows and smoke, every frame a painting of doomed romance and inevitable betrayal. Dialogue is razor sharp. "You're no good, and neither am I," Kathy purrs, and you believe her. The suspense isn't just about who will pull the trigger, but about when the trap will spring. Torner's direction is hypnotic, dreamlike, fatalistic, inescapable. Ebert argued that Out of the Past is noir boiled down to its purest essence. You can run from your past, but you'll never escape it. Watch it late at night, and you'll feel the shadows closing in. The Lady Vanishes. Long before he came to America, Hitchcock delivered The Lady Vanishes, a twisty, witty, nerve-wracking ride through pre-war Europe. A train steams through the snowy Alps, and somewhere in its crowded compartments, an elderly English woman simply disappears. Only one person, the plucky Iris, seems to care, and soon finds herself caught in a web of spies, lies, and danger. Roger Ebert praised The Lady Vanishes for its dazzling blend of suspense and humor. The setup is pure Hitchcock. A seemingly trivial mystery unspools into a life-and-death game. The supporting cast is full of eccentrics, and the dialogue is loaded with British wit. But the tension is real. As Iris tries to prove she's not crazy, as the train barrels through hostile territory, Hitchcock ratchets up the suspense with every passing mile. Is Miss Froy real, or has Iris lost her mind? Who can be trusted? The confined space of the train becomes a pressure cooker, every door and corridor a potential trap. Ebert admired how the film keeps us guessing and laughing until the very end. When the truth is revealed, it's both satisfying and unnerving. The Lady Vanishes set the standard for the ordinary person swept up in extraordinary danger template Hitchcock would perfect in Hollywood. It's a thriller that never lets up and never forgets to entertain. The Big Sleep. If you want noir at its smokiest, sharpest, and most incomprehensible, look no further than The Big Sleep. Humphrey Bogart's Philip Marlowe walks through a labyrinth of murder, blackmail, and double crosses so dense even the screenwriters lose track of who killed whom. Roger Ebert famously quipped that plot doesn't matter here, at least not as much as mood, character, and dialogue that could cut glass. The movie kicks off when Marlowe, private eye for hire, is drawn into the tangled affairs of the Sternwood family, a dying millionaire, his 2 wild daughters, and a blackmailer who's already ended up dead. The case spirals, bodies drop, and every clue opens a fresh can of worms. Lauren Bacall, with her world-class smirk, keeps Marlowe guessing about her real motives. The chemistry between Bogart and Bacall, absolutely electric. Ebert called The Big Sleep a film where what happens isn't as important as who it's happening to. The suspense doesn't come from figuring out the plot, but from watching Marlowe thread his way through a world where everyone's lying and danger is only ever a half step away. The dialogue is relentless, a staccato volley of threats, jokes, and double entendres. Howard Hawks' direction is lean and punchy. Cigarette smoke curls, rain patters, and every face in the frame looks like they have a secret. Ebert loved that you could watch The Big Sleep a dozen times and always discover a new detail. You might not solve the mystery, but you'll be hooked by the chase. Dial M for Murder. Alfred Hitchcock loved a locked room mystery, and Dial M for Murder is his most elegant, and somehow his most chilling. The entire film unfolds almost entirely inside a single London apartment, but the suspense is wound so tight it feels like the walls themselves are closing in. Ray Milland plays Tony Wendis, a retired tennis pro with a grudge. His wife, played by Grace Kelly, has been unfaithful. So Tony plots the perfect murder, a murder that, on paper, should be foolproof. But nothing ever goes according to plan in Hitchcock's world. When the would-be killer winds up dead and Grace Kelly's Margot is framed, the suspense ramps up to a fever pitch. Roger Ebert admired the way Hitchcock turns the apartment into a chessboard, moving his characters with surgical precision. Every phone call, every doorbell, every missing key is a fresh dagger of anxiety. The color, the lighting, the little moments, like Kelly's icy poise cracking under pressure, are all engineered to put you right on the edge of your seat. Ebert wrote that Dial M for Murder is a masterclass in suspense because the audience knows more than the characters do. We see the trap being set, we watch it snap, and then we bite our nails as we wait to see if justice will be out. The tension is relentless, but the payoff, delivered with Hitchcock's trademark wit and a final twist, is pure, giddy satisfaction. Never has murder seemed so civilized or so dangerous. The Asphalt Jungle. The Asphalt Jungle is a heist movie about hard-boiled Greek tragedy. John Huston's noir isn't just about the perfect crime, it's about how quickly perfection unravels when human nature gets involved. Roger Ebert called it one of the greatest caper movies ever made, and for good reason. The plot. A master criminal fresh out of prison assembles a ragtag crew, each man a specialist with his own fatal flaw, to rob a jewelry store in a city that's all shadows and rain-soaked streets. Sterling Hayden is Dix, the muscle with a dream of escape. Louis Calhern is the crooked lawyer. Even Marilyn Monroe, in one of her earliest roles, turns up as a gangster's mistress. What Huston does better than anyone is lay bare the suspense not just of the heist, but of the human heart. You feel the nerves, the desperation, the hope, and finally the doom as everything goes wrong, piece by piece. The robbery itself is a ballet of tension, quiet, methodical, and nerve-shredding. But it's the aftermath that's truly harrowing, as every man tries to outrun fate. Ebert loved the film's stripped-down honesty. There are no heroes, only men trapped by their own choices and weaknesses. The Asphalt Jungle is all grit, no glamour, a film that lingers in the mind like cigarette smoke after last call. It's a suspense thriller that shows how even the best-laid plans are no match for bad luck and bad decisions. Notorious. Romance and danger, spies and secrets. Notorious is Hitchcock at his most glamorous and his most nerve-wracking. Ingrid Bergman plays Alicia Huberman, the daughter of a Nazi spy, recruited by Cary Grant's Devlin to infiltrate a cabal of ex-Nazis in Rio. The assignment? Marry the group's leader and uncover their secrets. Easy, right? Roger Ebert was effusive in his praise for Notorious, at calling it one of Hitchcock's best, most intricate suspense stories. The tension is as emotional as physical. Will Devlin's jealousy blow the whole operation? Will Alicia's cover be blown? Hitchcock loads every scene with coded glances, trembling hands, and barely repressed passion. The famous key in the wine cellar sequence, still a masterclass in suspenseful filmmaking, as every second ticks by and the walls close in. What Ebert loved most was how the film blends suspense with true heartbreak. The stakes aren't just global, they're personal. Can love survive lies and betrayal? Can Alicia escape her own past? The suspense builds until the last, breathless moment when justice, love, and doom all collide on a sunlit staircase. Notorious isn't just a thriller. It's a film that aches with longing and pulses with danger. Hitchcock never balanced glamour and menace more perfectly, and Ebert thought it was proof the genre could be as emotionally rich as any drama. Touch of Evil. If you want noir so dark it borders on nightmare, look no further than Orson Welles' Touch of Evil. This is a film that opens with one of the most famous tracking shots in history, a 3.5-minute journey through a Mexican border town that promises violence from the first frame. Welles stars as Hank Quinlan, a corrupt, bloated sheriff whose mere presence oozes menace. Roger Ebert hailed Touch of Evil as the great twilight of film noir. It's a movie where borders, between nations, between good and evil, blur and dissolve. Charlton Heston is Vargas, an upright Mexican investigator, drawn into Quinlan's sticky web of crime, bigotry, and moral rot. Janet Leigh is his imperiled wife, caught in the crossfire. The suspense here is relentless. Welles fills every frame with queasy tilted angles, deep shadows, and grotesque faces. You never know who to trust, or when the hammer will fall. The town itself seems to conspire against decency, sucking everyone into its spiral of corruption. Ebert admired how Touch of Evil moves with the momentum of a nightmare, one bad decision leading to another until there's no way out. The final confrontation, a tense nighttime chase along the oily canal, is as nerve-shredding as any in cinema. Welles's last line, delivered as a sneering eulogy, echoes long after the credits roll. This is a suspense thriller that dares you to look away, but makes sure you never forget what you... Rear Window, a sweltering New York summer. An apartment courtyard teeming with lives, secrets, and shadows. Hitchcock's Rear Window is a suspense masterwork that turns the act of watching into a dangerous obsession. Roger Ebert called it the best of all the Hitchcock films, for good reason. James Stewart plays L.B. Jeff Jeffries, a photographer laid up with a broken leg, peering through his window at the daily dramas unfolding in the apartments across the way. What starts as innocent people watching turns sinister when Jeff begins to suspect that one of his neighbors has murdered his wife. But with no evidence and only the beautiful Lisa and his nurse Stella on his side, Jeff must use his wits and binoculars to get to the truth before the killer realizes he's being watched. The suspense here is exquisite. Hitchcock wrings tension from every glance, every flicker of a light, every shadow passing behind a curtain. The audience sees only what Jeff sees, making us complicit voyeurs, sharing his anxiety and helplessness. Will the murderer catch on? Will Jeff's snooping put Lisa in mortal danger? Ebert praised Rear Window as a movie about cinema itself, where watching is an act fraught with peril and possibility. It's both a nerve-wracking thriller and a sly commentary on the nature of moviegoing. The final confrontation, Jeff alone, vulnerable, the killer inching closer, still induces chills. It's suspense boiled to its purest form, and a reminder that the most dangerous things are sometimes right next door. Key Largo. A hurricane barrels toward the Florida Keys, but the real storm is already inside the hotel. Key Largo traps its characters and the audience in a pressure cooker, with suspense mounting as the winds and tempers rise. Roger Ebert described it as one of the tightest, tensest thrillers of the classic era. Humphrey Bogart is Frank McCloud, a weary World War II vet visiting the widow and father of a fallen comrade. But soon after arriving, they're taken hostage by Johnny Rocco, a snarling gangster on the run. With the hurricane raging outside, Rocco and his goons tighten their grip, and the suspense becomes suffocating. Huston plays the tension like a maestro. The close quarters, the relentless heat, the sound of wind battering the windows. It all heightens the sense of claustrophobia. Bogart's McCloud is all bottled up rage and decency, forced to make impossible choices as the bodies and stakes pile up. Robinson, meanwhile, oozes menace, his every gesture loaded with the threat of violence. Ebert admired how Key Largo uses the physical storm as a metaphor for moral turmoil. Who will break first, the criminals or the good guys? The final showdown, as the storm breaks and the moral clouds lift, is a classic for a reason. It's a suspense thriller that feels both intimate and epic, where survival means facing down both nature and human evil. The Killers. From its unforgettable opening, a pair of hired guns entering a small-town diner looking for the Swede, to its relentless flashback-driven investigation, The Killers is noir at its most fatalistic. Roger Ebert ranked it among the finest suspense thrillers ever made, a film that starts with death and works backward. Burt Lancaster makes his debut as the doomed Swede, a former boxer whose past sins have finally caught up with him. When two killers gun him down without resistance, insurance investigator Jim Reardon digs into the Swede's tangled history. A botched heist, a double cross, and the kind of femme fatale who ruins men just by walking into the room. The suspense in The Killers is both existential and immediate. Ziadmak builds dread with every twist and revelation, each flashback peeling away the layers of guilt and inevitability. The cinematography is pure noir, deep shadows, slanted light, faces half hidden. Every character is on the run from fate. Ebert was fascinated by how the film turns a simple murder into a sprawling meditation on destiny. The sense of doom is unshakable, yet the tension never lets up. By the end, the audience understands what the Swede did and why he couldn't escape. The Killers isn't just about crime, it's about the price of bad choices, paid in suspenseful, shattering moments. Laura? Who killed Laura Hunt? And who exactly was she? Laura is both a murder mystery and a dreamy, eerie psychological thriller, a film Roger Ebert adored for its haunting sense of unreality. From its hypnotic opening music to its mind-bending twist, it keeps you guessing and second-guessing until the last minute. Dana Andrews plays Detective Mark McPherson, investigating the apparent murder of advertising executive Laura Hunt. Every suspect, from the acid-tongued columnist Waldo Lidecker to Laura's weak-willed fiancé, is hiding something. As McPherson pores over Laura's portrait and belongings, obsession blurs into love, and reality grows slippery. Ebert was mesmerized by the film's mood. It's not just whodunit, but why does it feel like a dream? The suspense builds not from car chases or shootouts, but from lingering doubts, strange encounters, and one of the most shocking reversals in film noir. Preminger keeps the audience off balance, using light, music, and shadows to create a sense of unstable reality. When Laura herself steps out of the shadows, alive and very much part of her own mystery, the film pivots from classic noir to near-gothic suspense. Every character is suspect, every alibi a potential lie. Laura is a mystery you'll want to rewatch just to spot the clues you missed and to bask in its singular, suspenseful atmosphere. Psycho. Let's be honest, no list of suspense thrillers is complete without Psycho. It's the film that changed horror and suspense forever, a movie Roger Ebert called a savage, perverse, and entirely original thriller. Even if you know the shower scene, and who doesn't, the experience still leaves you rattled. Janet Leigh plays Marion Crane, a secretary on the run with stolen money, who checks into the lonely Bates Motel. There, she meets Norman Bates, shy, polite, and quietly unsettling. What starts as a tense cat-and-mouse game quickly takes a detour into the unthinkable. Hitchcock kills his apparent lead 45 minutes in, turning the whole story inside out. Ebert was obsessed with the film's structure and technique. Hitchcock toys with the audience. We sympathize with Marion, then with Norman, then with no one at all. Every shot is designed to unsettle, from the harsh lighting to the jarring score. The suspense builds and builds with no relief, just mounting dread. And that twist ending? It's so famous now that it's easy to forget how shocking it once was. Even today, Psycho grabs you by the throat and doesn't let go. It's not just a thriller, it's a master class in how to make audiences squirm. As Ebert said, Psycho is a film you never quite recover from. Strangers on a train, one train ride, two strangers, one perfect murder. Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train is a suspense engine running at full throttle, and Roger Ebert reveled in its twisted brilliance. The plot is almost diabolically simple. Tennis player Guy Haines meets the charmingly deranged Bruno Anthony, who proposes they swap murders, each killing someone the other wants gone, with no apparent motive or connection. When Bruno acts, murdering Guy's troublesome wife, Guy is drawn into a nightmare, haunted by guilt, suspicion, and Bruno's relentless, unhinged friendship. The suspense is relentless. Will Guy confess? Will Bruno force his hand? Every encounter drips with tension, every social nicety masking a darker threat. Ebert loved the way Hitchcock exploits ordinary settings, the tennis court, a carnival, a train ride, and turns them into arenas of psychological warfare. The famous merry-go-round climax is still heart-stopping, the kind of sequence that tightens every muscle in your body. Ebert praised Robert Walker's performance, a villain as unforgettably charming as he is chilling. Strangers on a Train isn't just a story about murder. It's about how fate and chance can destroy lives, and how you can never really escape a bargain with the devil. Gaslight. Before gaslighting became a pop psychology buzzword, Gaslight gave us one of cinema's most exquisite studies in psychological suspense. Roger Ebert singled it out as a thriller where the real horror is what's happening inside your own head. Ingrid Bergman won her first Oscar for playing Paula, a young bride whose husband slowly manipulates her into believing she's losing her mind. The film's suspense is almost unbearable, as everyday occurrences, a missing brooch, footsteps in the attic, the gaslights dimming, are twisted by Boyer's character into proof of Paula's madness. Angela Lansbury, in her film debut, adds another layer of intrigue as the insolent maid who may or may not be in on the plot. Ebert admired how Cukor transforms a cozy Victorian home into a labyrinth of paranoia. The audience sees what Paula sees, feels her confusion, and shares her terror as reality itself is called into question. The suspense is psychological, slow burning, and devastating. Will Paula break? Will anyone believe her? The film's final confrontation is both cathartic and chilling, a reminder that true horror isn't always supernatural. It can come from the people we trust most. To Have and Have Not. Yes, To Have and Have Not is often remembered as the film where Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall set the screen ablaze with their chemistry. But look closer, and you'll find a suspense thriller that sizzles with danger, double crosses, and the constant threat of violence. Roger Ebert noted that Hawks makes tension out of what isn't said as much as what is. Set on Martinique during World War II, Bogart's world-weary fishing boat, Captain Harry Morgan, just wants to stay out of politics. But when he's drawn into the underground resistance against the Vichy regime and into the orbit of Bacall's impossibly cool Slim, he's forced to choose sides. Spies and secret police lurk around every corner. Every conversation could be a trap. Ebert admired how Hawks builds suspense not through explosions, but through implication and subtext. The film is packed with charged silences, loaded glances, and the delicious uncertainty of who's friend or foe. The famous, "You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve?" The scene is as much about suspense as seduction. Will they get caught? Will they survive? Will they trust each other? The whole film is a slow burn of rising stakes, sudden reversals, and tense showdowns, all cloaked in smoky black and white. To have and have not proves that suspense can be as much about desire and danger as about guns and shadows. The Night of the Hunter, a fairy tale dipped in nightmare. The Night of the Hunter is unlike any other thriller on this list. Roger Ebert called it one of the most frightening films ever made, a Southern Gothic fable where suspense is as much spiritual as physical. Robert Mitchum is unforgettable as Harry Powell, a preacher with love and hate tattooed on his knuckles, and murder in his heart. He marries a widow to get his hands on hidden loot, then hunts her children through a landscape that's equal parts dream and waking terror. Every frame is a painting, stark black and white, that turns the American South into a place of looming shadows and bottomless menace. Ebert was hypnotized by the film's style, Lawton's only directorial effort. It blends expressionist angles, haunting lullabies, and moments of almost surreal beauty. The suspense is primal. Will the children escape? Who can they trust? How far will evil go? The river chase, Powell's hymn echoing in the darkness, is pure cinema, suspense distilled to its essence. The Night of the Hunter lingers like a fever dream, a reminder that the most terrifying monsters may wear the face of righteousness. Ebert praised it as a film that exists out of time, and once you've seen it, it's impossible to shake. Before film noir had a name, before Hitchcock was Hitchcock, there was Fritz Lang's M, a suspense thriller so foundational that Roger Ebert called it the blueprint for the modern crime film. Peter Lorre gives a legendary performance as Hans Beckert, a child murderer haunted by both the police and the criminal underworld in Weimar, Germany. Lang uses sound, still new in cinema at the time, to chilling effect. Beckert's whistled tune becomes a motif of dread, echoing through alleyways and courtyards. The suspense is relentless, not just in the manhunt, but in the citywide panic and paranoia that follow each new crime. The audience is never allowed to relax. Every shadow could hide the killer. Every mob could turn violent. Ebert praised M for its empathy as well as its terror. Lang forces us to see Beckert as a human, not just a monster, making the climax. A kangaroo court where the city's criminals decide his fate, both horrifying and tragic. The suspense isn't just about catching the killer, it's about confronting evil, justice, and the darkness within us all. More than 90 years later, M still grips viewers with its eerie atmosphere, moral complexity, and nerve-shredding suspense. It's not just a classic, it's the origin story for every suspense thriller that followed. Which of these iconic thrillers left you sleepless? Did your favorite suspense classic make the cut, or did we miss a hidden gem? Drop your picks in the comments. We love hearing from true film fans. If this countdown got your heart racing, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic deep dives and hidden treasures from Hollywood's golden age. Hit the bell so you never miss a twist. Until next time, keep watching, because in the world of great thrillers, danger is always just a frame away.